playable for Navia in certain comps and just overall just for a comfortable play. I'm the kind of person who likes to have a little bit of extra ER. And then my hats, it's gonna be it could have rolled a little bit better, but it'd be really, really hard to replace this. The amount of resin, like overall our stat line is 26.6 ER, which is on the upper end of what you want for a Navia. And to be honest, that's my favorite place to be. I like to have it on the upper end. I have a decent amount of additional attack from my artifacts, and my crit value is over 200, about 205 there. So I don't know, overall stat line is 81, 184. This puts her in one of my better built characters. It puts her in the top 6% of all Navia, which, you know, isn't a crazy ranking, but top 6% still very respectable, and I'm overall just very happy with the character. The one thing I need to do is get her talents up. Once I, oh wait, do I have extra right now? Oh, I can level her up right now. We're gonna make history live on video. The character that I have meant. First, I like just like anyway, very happy with my Geori is a new idol just started farming for us, which is playing also having our ticket. Anyway, practice it's not actually that good. I just meant public achieve. I wonder if I I think realistically my house is so, but overall, I'm fine. I want to crown her, and I think well, the artifact said, well, kind of a hybrid, I guess, apparently. You know what? I don't worry about, I used to worry about his it would have actually stopped in something that I used to feel more in. I don't know. Actually, something that's actually a solid damage on top of it. But the thing is, now with Marina especially, I just I like to run him on Skyward, actually. Like how well that's fine. I came on Skyward Blade because I just like yes, if you're maxing or better, but you don't actually and to have the extra bar on and if that's the I mean I don't actually use this
Kinda handles a little weird. Did I kill them already? There they are. Pew! Ow. Ow.
definitely solid. Essentially, you have that. But not back. Let it go. Very good. Back stats. Value. But yeah, I honestly don't have that good in this one. But you another sorry, yeah, it's still better. Better is it's alright, and I think all the concept is already great piece of all across that problem. That's why I just didn't get it wrong. As I have used it with my Marshy but I actually still have better damage. Not one of my best build characters, but definitely built well enough.
Where else can I find memories? Although honestly, I kind of just want to focus on the main regional phenomena, because after you get them, the rest kind of comes easy at that point.
I just remember that I a bit faster. I'll do one of the characters that I see. Okay. Level 70 because I have enough bar from actually bad in general. Yeah, it's not that good. Not very leveled up. I even was a lot more, but yeah, this means that's how long
For some reason,
what cause was he?
game's running really smoothly now. There's still some stutters and the occasional glitchy graphics, but for the most part, it is running above 30 FPS, which is great. Right.
It's just yeah, sorry. I tried. I got you festival, but I guess it's hard or like top six. Like, that's actually does. All I don't have it set up, but that's do something. This there we go. Now this is very fine.
Okay, Satoru.
No,
Iwata. Fuck.
all in all, that's actually guys, your son. I used to use but now I'll add that line, so I lot. I love it. I use her a lot more. Provided it's one of my best skill characters. Sure. Sure.
Where is it? Uh, dang it. Well, there goes all my fairies again. Am I stupid?
for just A, and again, this is a bubble. Now we can contact it. Up. Then contact. Because she's still incredible. Fills up. Yeah, okay. Don't have it. Here. Okay. Have it. That's it. Just the kind of lower investment. I would actually level up person investment. But most of most of I actually really like it. I think underrated venting is something I think I'm worried that I would like it and make sure that we're actually getting time to release that's what yeah, I was up there. So I think I don't actually that one just low time. I have I it's I will but the servant's line passing especially like better. Might not look at their my other you look at is not bad. So
God damn it.
I'm actually again like and I don't have any I would type so and higher punch and then yes, but this is hard. But I'm trying. Um,
I forgot to take a picture of them.
I, Venari obviously like that. Are you sure? It's just in here. This, but I tested it. Michael Well, I took 11, and I had someone tell me that I used get her red pressure, and all. So I have to get it. I feel like it's not even that much better than, and I have to get tomorrow, or for it, and that's the support. And I have to.
Oops.
Noelle is good, but she's. Oh, I saw. I think a lot. Like, it's very, very good. Not you. Not you. Not you. Right? But my investment. She doesn't.
I'll be back.
I did level up her talents when I tested it. I leveled up her talents. But for damage, like, it don't matter. For Sucrose, obviously level 90. That Dory, I actually have worked on her talents there for especially for an X-ray DPS, and I will be doing it my next guide is going to go scary. Razor, level 90, Razor did what I did that for, it's not that I did. But I think now for Regina, I still haven't seen anyone do multi, like, I think that single reason physical damage and electro damage buffed at the same time by Karina, and then I don't know, you just cook there. I feel like there's some cooking to be done with Karina Razor, because she can buff multiple damage types, and then you can run attack and attack goblet on your Razor. I feel like there's some cooking to be done. Problem is, Razor's probably just better than that, but it's still like I will need a lot. Lisa, I love my Lisa guide. My Lisa guide, go watch it. Lisa guide. But and I do have C4. I just got C4 from Fish, so I will be testing out at C point, which is a lot of characters to test. Kave, I'm waiting for a C6 before I can test it again. Pull it to 90 and like my movie. Even though I can't remember it's just so much resources. But I think he's still fine with me. I would just like to get a C make the final test. I was level 90, etc. And this is level 90, same deal. I did level her. I leveled a normal attack up from the base server. That was pretty cool. I kind of like my Synchro also sharing artifacts and sharing emblem is always a pain in the butt. I find myself not actually doing that much. Last video.
Let's continue the Koga
I
quest.
would like to try to get Barbara at some point. Barbara and stuff like that, but we'll have to wait. Eventually. I'll end up just at a amount of that out. My Zhao is level 80. I'm working on level 90. Working on his talent.
Yeah, it's near.
I just tested him before on a friend's account.
Near Gerudo.
One of my technically unbuilt characters. Him and Godwing are my technically not fully built characters. I actually do have the talent books. I just don't want to spend them right yet. Because I'm scared. So we're just holding off. Genyon, another character that's taking a load off my account by not being level 90 and not having a fully invested burst, but I would like to 90 her and invest in her. And invest in, honestly, I really want to invest in her normal attack and in her skill, because DPS Genyon's actually good, and it's really, really underrated. Anyway, Rifley, he uses Viper and Marishi's APCs as well. But we have attack. You can use attack or EM on him. I even have an onset goblet for him, which is pretty neat. And we have good EM. We obviously have his signature weapon, so we've got a pretty awesomely built rifle. Pretty darn. From this, this is a 5 piece. So,
Time comes new experiences and ideas. In the case of JoJo, that's called Stillborn Run. 24 years into his volume, Hiro Igarashi Opus. The Opus would revolutionize how he tells his stories, everything from his heroes, his art, his villains, his side characters, the overall plot of the story being much more seinen than shonen, and in specific, his reimagining of old characters would do wonders for this part. Diego Brando is arguably the best reimagining of these characters, as he is the stillborn. Dio's life is terrible. However, while you can say in real life bad conditions can lead to a bad person, with Dio that is not the case. The story heavily emphasizes the fact that Dio's nature would have been no matter how much love he got from his parents, he would have just turned out to be with. He still would have climbed ladders in society, he still would have came up with a plan, and was fated to become a monster regardless of circumstances. However, with Diego, that might not be the case. Diego is not a pure evil character archetype. It is something much more complex than that. Diego is a child filled with his innocence and joyfulness, only to be a few pages later stripped of that, thanks to the common flock of man not treating him or his mother with any kind of respect. Due in part to Dario. I swear he is the starter to all these problems we face in both of these universes. Being a mother without father raising a child is highly difficult back in these days. Not only is it hard to raise Diego, but it is also hard to live against people's views of you and so much more. Common or rich, people can still be cruel and evil. And because of that, Diego's mom dies, making the innocent Diego transform into the current one, no, the one that wants to climb society to beat everybody because nobody wants to help him and his mother. And especially against his father, who blindly away never helped him and his mom when they needed it the most. After the death of his mother, Diego would climb society, eventually to the Joestar Manor. After that, he went down jockey with in Great Britain. But all this fortune would be at the cost of others. It is pretty evident through rumors and speculation that Diego is not a good person, and throughout the story, this is basically confirmed. Diego steals, cheats, and beats others into submission so he can climb on top of them. Men and society are but a tool for him to abuse to further his own gain, in an attempt to get revenge on the common man and on society. Now, when comparing Dio and Diego in terms of their early childhood, they are vaguely similar. Dio is a character who relies on show not tell heavily. His whole backstory is abusive family, and that's really it. We don't really get to see how it's abusive, or at least to an in-depth degree like Diego's. Then to all of a sudden be labeled as evil for evil's sake because of fate, so none of it really mattered until he got to the Joestar Mansion, therefore making his backstory irrelevant. But on the flip side of that, Diego's backstory did matter. All of it is hyper-crucial for his character. Without it, he would be nothing. Unlike Dio, who could have just shown up to the manor only for a few chapters later just to be revealed that he's evil for evil's sake. The relatability of Diego's backstory make him much better than Dio. Being evil for evil's sake is cool for a villain, however, a sympathetic villain will always outperform a villain who's just evil for evil's sake. Relatability and sympathy will always be king. Now, in all fairness, yes, Dio also wants to climb society too because of his backstory. I'm not saying it's completely irrelevant because he's evil for evil's sake, because it is still there. However, in Diego's backstory, it is emphasized a lot more heavily than it is in Dio's. villains, giving me, the reader, or anybody, a much clearer idea on what these villains want. When it comes to the backstory department, it is clear who wins here. It is Diego, which in retrospect makes sense. After 24 years of making manga, elaborating on a character's backstory is pretty crucial for the character, and not only that makes them much more enjoyable to read, unlike some characters
Hello again,
who are
lady.
all over the place. Now, moving on into the bulk of Steel Ball Run, this is where things change pretty drastically between the characters. For the first couple chapters of Steel Ball Run, Diego and Dio seem similar, at least when it comes to his part 1 counterpart. However, coming to Scary Monsters and onward, drastic changes start to occur. Diego, after being introduced to stand powers Holy Corpse, his hunger now evolves into something much greater. His previous ambitions were to get the money from the Steel Ball Run race and finally mark his place atop society. However, now with the corpse of Jesus Christ in the mix, things change dramatically, as the corpse offers a great boon to anybody who thing, as fortune will compel them. With this fortune behind Diego, he can gain his true revenge on society. How Diego does this is he is constantly battling everybody on that Steel Ball Run roster. Johnny, Gyro, Sandman, Pop Pants, everybody. How he will beat all of them is by his hunger. Or he wants to win, the likely it is he will win. He hungers more than anybody here. So much so that I think he's actually hungrier for victory than the main villain himself. Due to Diego's hunger and his villainous nature, it's much more interesting to read him than original Dio. Don't get me wrong, Dio's cruel nature and his motivations to take over the world are cool at one point, but they feel very flat and shallow. But on the flip side of that, while Diego's motivations and goals are very tame in comparison, they are much more impactful and have way more depth. Just the way he talks to Gyro and Johnny and Valentine just really proved this point. The best example I can use here is when Diego defeats Funny Valentine. Diego's quick monologue about how he's crossed the line and he has finally gained victory over a high-class person shows where he was and where he is now. And it's honestly badass as hell. Part 1 Dio, and then extend to even Part 3 Dio, and I would even say to even a further extent, Part 6 Dio, don't talk like this. After Scary Monsters and Bracing the Storm, you truly do see the experience take full effect when it comes to Araka's writing. Not only do you see a character originally was pretty okay, get transformed into something much better, you also see his effect on the entire cast as it makes them better. I feel like a problem with earlier JoJo parts is that doesn't happen. There's not a lot of character development that actually shows up, but in Part 7 it is pretty heavy with character development everywhere. Diego is actually the prime source for that a lot of the time. Without him teaching others to hunger, the story might not be what it is right now. Peak fiction. The only version of Dio that he close to Diego is that of Part 6, because after 20 years of being a character, he actually did development. However, the crazy jump from Part 1 Dio to Heaven Plan Dio in Part 6 is kind of crazy because there's not a lot of development that takes place during that. Just a massive jump in character with no good explanation. Other than I sat at the bottom of the edge for 100 years, I've changed. That was all off screen, by the way. While on the flip side, you always see Diego constantly changing on screen. Having Dio show up in parts and not have a lot of screen time will have side effects. And I think one of the biggest side effects is fans and the audience just having this weird idea of how Dio works. What especially makes that worse is the fact that it's not him physically showing up part to part. It's either a passing mention or a crazy jump in character, only to wait for several more parts until he's... And in said part, he's not talking like his counterpart at all. Part 6 Dio is really weird in retrospect. I'm being so dead ass. Diego clearly takes the character development and the consistency part of this video hands down. So now moving on to the later half of Steel Ball Run, this is where I think a lot of interesting character points for Diego start to crop up that Dio never had. The major one being is teaming up. Dio never teams up. Other than Part 6 is the only time he teams up with somebody. And even then, I don't think that's even a team up. I think that's a brotherhood thing going on there. However, Diego does team up, in fact, multiple times. We see with Soundman that Diego is one-sided when it comes to his team-ups. He still views people as, well, part of society and will use them as tools to further gain wants in the world. But in other occasions, like with Hot Pants, there are glimpses of where the team-up actually could be successful, where both parties get what they want and either has to be, critically injured for a goal to be achieved. There is a glimpse of hope Diego when Hot Pants would truly honor power if she just gets the corpse. On top of giving Diego the of where Dario is. Diego could have it all and doesn't even need the race. And for the most part, it almost really works. They basically kill Valentine. If it wasn't for plot shenanigans, Dio could have got all of it. But actually knowing him and his track record with partners, R.I.P. Magenta, Wikipedia, and Soundman, that probably was not going to happen. But however, in a writing standpoint, the fact that I almost believe that means that it was good. Why I like these ups is because it shows who he is. If he cannot treat one person with kindness, he's not going to treat society with kindness. At that point, this was already seeing how he thought of society. But basically, after these team-ups, it makes it crystal. Part 1 Dio never gets this type of attention nor deeper look at it. Sure, we get one who rejects his humanity and does awful things, and well, yes, some of them do have major importance to the character. A lot of the time, they're just there for shock value. You finally compare the characters of Part 1 Dio to the majority of Diego that was shown as we are, it's a night and day difference. There is a clearly better written villain here between these two. It's Diego. Everything from backstory, character development, consistency. I genuinely and honestly think that Dio only has like 2 good moments in all of Part 1, that being him rejecting his humanity, him admitting to Jonathan that he is his other half. But when you compare it to Diego's history and does during Steel Ball runs, interactions with Gyro, Johnny, Valentine, Hot Pants, his individual moments to himself, he just has a lot more to offer. On forward to characters like Dio, Part 6 in there, and comparing it to Ultimate Diego, things get complicated fast. So sadly, during the fight between Hot Pants and Valentine, Diego dies. However, a few chapters later, and being put under the rotation, Funny Valentine has to his land. Bring back Diego Brando from a parallel world to get the corpse parts and so the US may have fortune and never misfortune. The alternate world Diego is question actually. This reality has the world, and throughout its entire version of its Steel Ball Run race had to stand, but basically is more or less the same character. With alternate Diego now in this world, a final battle between Johnny and him occurred. But the crucial highlight for Diego with this fight is the fact that is willing to sacrifice a part of himself to win. It just goes to show what he will do to achieve his goals and dreams. He treats no man as equal and will quite literally give an arm and a leg for what he wants. He beats Johnny Joestar, a very rare occurrence for a villain in this franchise to beat the hero, and successfully gets the corpse into the vault. But Diego comes to know hard lesson. The more you hunger, the more you'll be less satisfied. And in his hubris, lets his guard down against the Castillo, who has his base world corpse in a bag. The bag then proceeds to collide with Diego. The rules of D4C's ability kicks in, and he dies in a furious multiversal explosion. In a way, I could almost describe this as an Icarus tale. Always hungry, always wanting to reach a higher level, always trying to reach the top of the world was going to have its consequences. Diego's metaphorical pterodactyl wings could not take the extremes and help. It is truly poetic, the story of Brando, a man who wanted so much from the world, never got it, and then tried to take it away from the world, only to be burned by it. The same could not be said for Party. Not because he's not a fantastical villain, just because now they are 2 different characters. Diego is written to be in parallel to Part 1. Into a slightly further semblance to the worldly stuff, and you call back Dio. But when it comes to character motivations, they are really truly the opposite. One character is still trying to solve one's own personal goals, while the other side one is basically a philosopher trying to figure out the mechanisms of the universe and then trying to surpass them to eventually control his fate and so many others. However, still comparable because they represent the world and tarot card meanings. When a character like Diego show up, they symbolize the end of the story. And with that, they both well, while I'll say Diego is not the main villain of the story, he is a pretty significant one that can be off. With him being who only knows about the Holy Corpse, the only people that know about it now are the good ones, Johnny, Lucy, and Steve, being the only ones. The Corpse now finally on the flip side of that, Jotaro defeated Dio, so our family can rest, like, personally. Overall, when you are comparing the overall portion of these 2 characters' arcs, they are vaguely similar, but also vaguely not similar. This is due in part to the fact that Araki was trying to write a part 1 character with part 3 lines at the very end. So it feels very weird. In my opinion, I don't think you can compare them anymore, as them being the grand finale or the enders for their part respectively. When you look at their characters at this point in their stories respectively, Diego is still a man trying to climb the top of society to be number 1, while on the other hand, Dio is this reclusive, high-thinking philosopher figure who's trying to figure out the mechanisms of the universe, while granted being a douchebag to then rule over humanity. Basically meaning one villain is a much grander version than the other. So in my opinion, I don't think they're completely comparable anymore. However, in the areas they are comparable in, I think they're pretty much even, if not really good at what they do, that I really can't choose which one is better. You can clearly tell by now, the farther we get in with Dio, the better Araki got with his writing, which makes it, for me, much harder to choose who I think is better. When you compare both his characters in their totality to each other, you start to clearly see how Araki's experiences and ideas when it comes to writing really take effect here. Do not get me wrong, I love Dio. He is one of my favorite JoJo. However, what I always disliked about him is how inconsistent he is. The massive change in character does feel really weird for a JoJo fan like myself who has read this series constantly over and over again. In a really meta way, unintended, he is always trying to solve his past mistakes by trying to rewrite them in a better way in the future. Part 6 Dio being a pretty good example of that, and to a further extent, technically, Diego being greatest example of that. Diego has almost every category over Dio other than the literal main villain. That says a hell of a lot when it comes to characters. Diego Brando is an example of what happens when an author tries to rewrite something he has much more experience in now than he did previously. The better Brando was always Diego Brando. Well, that's all I have to say. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated. Till the next one, ladies and gentlemen.
This is not Sakuya. These two characters from the same manga, their names are Patrick and Journo. Today, I'm going to be talking about the character inspirations for Togo 6, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. While the prior PC-98 games pull primarily from pop culture, sometimes shamelessly, the Windows games pull primarily from mythology and history, that is, with the exception of Togo 6. The characters and even the writing feels similar to that of the PC-98 games. Until it was the transition where Zune was trying to figure out what he wanted this series to become, before it finally started to click in Togo 7 and 8. Togo 6 is much more simple. Speaking of simple, let's talk about Rumia. One of the things she's best known for is her T-posing she does, which is supposed to be a reference to Big J. And yeah, that's something you'll notice with a lot of Togo 6. Zune really wanted to go heavy on the Shanghai Alice bit. There's a constant alteration of explicitly Eastern and Western influences. Even your two-player character choices are an Eastern Shrine Maiden and a Western Witch, which gives perspective on these random tangents within the dialogue. But Rumi's main bit is her ability to manipulate darkness. It sounds like something an endgame boss would have. However, Zune thought it would be funny to make a final-sounding enemy be the very first boss in the series, something known as a Deochi, a punchline that comes right at the beginning as the community comes onto the stage. In fact, Zune mentioned in an interview that the entire 6th game was meant to be a sort of punchline. A series titled Eastern, but the first game would prominently feature a Western mansion and Western mythology. Rumia exists to be the opening to the opening punchline. Her name could also be romanized as Lumi, as in the Latin word for lumen, which means light. As a yokai of darkness that uses moonlight spell cards, this wouldn't be too much of a stretch, though Zune has explicitly used Rumia, so we can't know for sure. Finally, this art by Izumi Takemoto is reminiscent of Rumia and could be the inspiration for her design. This one might be a reach, but
Interesting.
Takemoto's style was a huge inspiration for Zune. It primarily shows in the PC-98 era. For example, Ellen was based on one of Takemoto's characters. Sorry, did I say based on? I meant to say he literally took Ellen, name, pose, and everything, and just shoved her into the game. If you think this video is long, the PC-98 but anyway, that's Rumia. She's a girl with a serious power that controls darkness, yet her first line is so bright and casual. I like her because she's the representation of Togo's world being contrarian, where the savage becomes relaxed. Her ribbon was designed to have some secrets within, but it hasn't been used so far. Churno is the first of several characters that take some inspiration from the manga Sarai by Masahiro Shima, which ran from 1998 to 2008. I'm going to be bringing up Sarai a lot in this video because it influenced Toho a lot more than one would think. The manga takes place in a post-apocalyptic world with monsters, slave trafficking, and many other things that you could think to shove in that sort of setting. And the ones who are sent to solve the problem? Battle Maidens. The most prominent of these is our titular main character, Sarai. It's a seinen manga featuring body horror, high-impact sexual violence, nudity, and other very non-Toho things. Instead, people's main aesthetics of the characters. People, battle maids, and their uniforms. The mob caps that the maids wear feature prominently in Toho's character designs during the early Windows era. As we'll see later, the maid uniform itself is quite similar to Sakuya's maid uniform. One of the recurring characters is the maid watcher, a short-tempered maid often seen taking care of Sarai's injuries. So where did this ice fairy bit come from? Well, according to Zun's writing at the Shibuya exhibition for Toho 6, aside from confirming the Sarai connection, Chiruno was almost Chirudo for the word chilled. So I'm guessing he took the name, saw the word chill in it, and said, this character will be ice-based. If you're wondering why it's spelled like this, the first official romanization was in PCB, where she was. Speaking of firsts, many people know Chern was a fairy. She may not have originally been intended as one. Toho 6, her Omake text refers to her as an ice spirit, while in Toho 7, her profile calls her a yokai of ice. Yet, Lily White's profile in this game explicitly calls her a fairy. It isn't until Toho 9 that Cherno is called an ice fairy, same game with infamous 9. You could say Cherno's identity in the fandom was solidified in Phantasmagoria, Flower View, or embodiment of Scarlet Devil, the characters have designed set in stone. We decided it was time to give those mobs a concrete design that lines up with the current Toho design philosophy. One of them, a special personality. That one special mob was Chirna. She made multiple appearances throughout the series, and she's still relevant to today. I never expected it to made her. Only we could say the same for Ling, whereas Zun originally describes her Chinese girl. Described as a Chinese-looking yokai, she guards the sky, and she using Chinese-styled martial arts. There are theories that she might have been based on the Red Guards of the Chinese Revolution, or even the main character of Sarai because they both have red hair. First Winter's debut with the title Eastern. Wouldn't it be amusing if I designed it around a Western-style match? That's the contrarianism embodiment of Scarlet Devil was based on. I made it more fun by making a Chinese gatekeeper guarding a Western-style match. She's the character born from such extreme contrarianism. I honestly think that's the extent of her inspiration. Patchouli is very straightforward. As mentioned in my very first video, Patchouli is a type of purple flowered plant, which is the name's most likely origin. But Toho's Patchouli is actually inspired by Sarai's Patchouli, the purple-haired maid with healing magic pictured here. She debuted in Sarai's 7th volume in October of 2001, less than a year before Toho 6's August 2002. Patchouli's magic is worth talking about. It manipulates 7 elements, the 5 Chinese elements, also known as the Wuxing phases, and the Sun and Moon elements. These 7 elements correspond to the Japanese days of the week. Patchouli actually uses them in the order starting from Tuesday for fire, ending on Monday. Zun actually refers to her as the one-week girl himself in the Omake text. I will, however, note that the Japanese calendar wasn't directly based on Wuxing. Instead, it was based on the 7 classical planets, the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, and Saturn. And just like with Wuxing, Patchouli can combine these elements for a variety of results. And as an aside, Zun never intended for her to have striped clothing, apparently. He was surprised to see so many fan works have them. I guess these are supposed to be shadows. And then we have Sakuya. We can start with the obvious. The ability to stop time, a Dio color palette in the fighting games, the Dio poses, and even a spell card named The World. Sakuya's most obvious inspiration is Dio from Part 3 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But is it her biggest inspiration? To answer that, we'll continue with Sarai. This character from before, her name is Nudge. Just like Dio, she has a fighting game color palette from Sakuya. She's a maid that features heavily in Volume 9 of Sarai, released in April of 2002. Again, only half a year from Toho 6's release. As you can see, she looks a lot like Sakuya. The manga, Nudge could be described as a bit clumsy, but takes her duties seriously. As for this character, her name is Flicker, a hot-blooded, competitive secondary protagonist of Sarai. While she doesn't have the striking resemblance that Nudge has, she primarily fights with knives just like Sakuya. So Sakuya could be seen as a blend of these two characters. But before I move on, there is one potential inspiration that we'll probably never get confirmation for. This is the Shinto goddess of knowledge, Konohana Sakuya Hime, also known as simply Sakuya Hime. The topic itself deserves its own video, but it's theorized that Sakuya was originally meant to be Sakuya Hime. Now, does Sakuya herself take any inspiration from the goddess? Outside of potentially the name, not really. But I wanted to bring it up as it's a pretty interesting theory. Going back to JoJo for a moment, while Sakuya was a reference to Part 3 Dio, Emilia has elements of Part 1 Dio. Most of Part 1 takes place in a giant mansion that looks like the SDM. At this point in the series, Dio doesn't have a stand, but he is transformed into a vampire. And one of the enemies that Dio sends against JoJo is Jack the Ripper, who fights by throwing knives just like Sakuya. Sakuya even has a spell card called Jack the Ripper. And then Marissa and Romelia quote an exchange between JoJo and Dio where the former asks, "How many people's blood have you sucked at this point?" To which Romelia and Dio answer, "How many slices of bread have you life?" While Sakuya's connection with Dio is obvious, Romelia's is deceptively just as strong. Aside from JoJo, Hellsing is another vampire series that could be a source of inspiration. The Hellsing Manor is similar to the STM. There's also a vampire hunter named Alexander Anderson who throws holy bayonets in a similar fashion to Sakuya's knives. It seems to have an unlimited supply of them, also like Sakuya. Alucard himself is Vlad the Impaler, and it claims to be descended from. At the time of Toho 6's release, Hellsing was halfway through its publication and its anime was currently airing, so it certainly has some weight to it. Her sprite in Toho 6 is actually based on this art of Nudge. Her stage theme, the young descendant of Sepesh, is a reference to Vlad Sepesh, the inspiration for Dracula, Emilia claims to be descended from, though her sister claims otherwise. Her boss theme is musically inspired by Beethoven's Eighth Sonata, but its title is actually a reference to Maurice Ravel's Pavane pour a Dead Princess, a pavane being a slow processional dance popular during the Renaissance. Finally, we have this game character, Remia, from the RPG Toshin City 2 by Alisoft, guys that made Rants. And those games. Remia is nicknamed Eternally Sleeping Princess, reminiscent of our eternally dead princess. Zune himself said he enjoyed playing Toshin City 2 as a college student, which wasn't long before Toho 6, so it's possible this is where her name comes from. And with that, we finally make it to the extra stage, Flandra Scarlet. Like Romelia, her name may come from a character in Toshin City 2, a woman named Francesca Duran. Ron or Ron. At a glance, this doesn't seem like much of a connection. For those unaware, Flandra's original Japanese pronunciation is actually Rando, and Francesca here, Ron Gordon, omitting just the last two characters of her last name for them, with an exact match. This would potentially explain the origin behind her name. In the game, she was enslaved in a dungeon and tortured to the point of insanity. Flandra is likewise described as insane in Toho 6's Omanga events. As for Flandra's iconic wings, they might be inspired by marks from Kirby's Super Shroud. Some people say their boss names are similar, but I don't think they're close enough to say for sure. So that's all I have for Flandra, but it'd be remiss of me to not talk about her theme. Gwen Owen was her. This is just one of many Agatha Christie references Zune has slid into the series over the years. In this case, Agatha Christie's novel And Then There Were None is a murder mystery where two corpses' names were Hugh and Owen, short for unknown, as the victims realized too late that nobody actually knew who they were. Zune chose this name for Flandra's song because she's an unknown being. Thus, U and Owen was her. Unknown was her. Flandra's survival spell card, Secret Barrage, And Then There Were None, is of course a direct reference to that same novel. Now, normally I would stop here, but the credit theme of Toho 6 is one of my favorite songs in the series. Back when I first heard it, it was still being translated as Crimson Belvedere, Eastern Dream. However, the translation has since been updated to Scarlet Chamber, Eastern Dream, as it is a reference to one of what are considered the four great classic novels in Chinese literature, Dream of the Red Chamber. The novel could also be translated as A Dream of Ancients. It even has a term referring to the study of the novel, redology, as in the color red, as in the character Cole, Molecule for the game's title and molecule, its name. I love that it's the credit theme that has a reference which ties everything up to this point together. Speaking of tying everything up, that's all I have for Turbo 6. I hope to see you again next time.
Over $3,000 spent.
Thank you so much to Misplay for sponsoring this video, but more on them later. Hey, yeah, are we rolling yet? Yeah? Okay, cool, awesome. You're gonna blur my face, right? Yeah? Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. So, what is a Fujoshi?
Oh, yes. A Fujoshi. And romance stories like Boys Love or BL, Yaoi, sort. Yeah.
Are you one? Are you a Fujoshi?
Um. Well, I get called a Fujoshi a lot for some reason. I mean, I don't read Boys Love, BL, manga, yaoi, anime, or any of that stuff, but you know, I do ship gay men ships and fandoms, but also like gay women ships too. So I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't like the word fujoshi though
Why?
because it means you're rotten.
Holy shit, there's 16 replies, but no reply shows up. Oh, okay. Weird.
A good portion of my online content surrounds LGBTQIA issues and representation in video games. I mean, look at me. I don't think I had to clear that up for you. A quick gander at my video registrar shows that I started off this series with the game Genshin Impact and dissecting the hidden queer coding in it. I had a lot talking about the potential coding for the women-loving women ships as well as the male-loving male ships. I made 3 videos on this, totaling around 2.5 hours of content.
I want to watch them.
When I published the 3rd and final one, I got this quote retweet. The women-loving women content being 2 NPCs, Florivia, which is a Genshin queer woman ship, barely mentioned in the I haven't found much content but there's some stuff part, and then a disclaimer about another fem/slash ship being absolutely forgotten. Wow, with a reply under that being, I'm not surprised. After watching some of her videos, she's definitely an avid Fujoshi.
Bruh.
Bro!
Yeah, how come there's not a term for people like me? You know, men who love Yuri. Although, even though there's a term for women loving
I
yaoi,
have to take a step back.
that is once again very clear sexism.
My woman-loving
I know normally when I'm going for sexism, I'm usually against women with these rants.
In a position where I was
I'm normally. I don't like modern day feminism just being all about how women should be superior rather than, you know, what feminism originally and should be about, which is that they should just be equal to men. Actually, funny little story. There was an event held just a few days ago. Is that a Stone Talus? Hell yeah, it is. Let's make a car that will destroy this bastard. There was like a banner. It was so fucking cringe, man. It said, his story becomes her story. Like, jeez. Makes me want to puke. You know? But this is one of the rare cases where I am against men in the feminism department. How come? I don't know enough Japanese to make up a term myself. But Come on, there should definitely be a term for people like me. You know? That is what feminism and equality is supposed to be about. I should have put a spring load on it. Anyway, that's all for my TED Talk.
Defending myself against the Fujoshi allegations. Why? Why did I feel the need to? And also, like, what is wrong with Fujoshis? And after much research, data gathering, and philosophical pondering, I've come to the conclusion for this video that the vilification of the Fujoshi is a hate bandwagon at best, and misogynistic, racist, and transphobic at worst.
How is it racist?
That
Oh
is
no.
quite the potent claim to make, but why do I make it?
Also, there's a Fujoshi
You're watching the
group
video, so I'm gonna
that made one of the most
explain that.
popular
Hello, my
JoJo
beautiful rap
memes.
sewer. Welcome back to my channel.
Kakyoin,
or welcome to
did
it.
you
My
lay
name is
this
E,
egg?
as in Yaoi, girl. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also I stream on Twitch. Join us at twitch.tv/.
What does she stream?
Social. And now, without any further ado, let's dive into the world of Fujoshis.
There's a Yuri manga that I really like that I watched a while, that I read rather. I wanted to get an anime adaptation because it's really good.
Let's just level the playing.
In fact, maybe it does have one by now or something, I don't know. It only recently ended when I read it.
Bare bones definition. Fujoshi
JKX Fujoshi Office Lady or something along those lines is the name.
Who enjoys boys love in any form. Boys love, also known as BL, is a type of genre in the manga anime scene, which is basically just a love story between two boys. Pretty straightforward, okay? The term
Straightforward.
is
Sorry.
tandem with BL. In Japan, it primarily refers to the fan-created works that featured a love story between two male characters from a popular anime or manga. Yaoi is actually an acronym for the phrase Gamanishi, Ochinashi, Yuminashi, which translates to no climax, no punchline, no meaning. Basically meaning that there's
This
no
car
real
is a
purpose, there's no real
freaking-
plot, just vibes, alright? It's just for fun. These created works are often in the form of doujinshis, which are basically self-published books
Abort.
that can be like fanzines or original stories. The word doujinshi itself translates to magazine published by like-minded people. So it was always meant for a tight-knit community and like-minded people. Like how I just said. So, for example, yaoi would be what a doujin about Naruto and Sasuke from Naruto being in love is called. There are huge conventions dedicated purely to doujin creation, such as Comic-Con and Kamisha. The full history of doujins and the word yaoi shows the original use of the word, but nowadays yaoi kind of has the connotation of being a boys' love stories, but in an explicit form, I should say. In the West, where I live, we often use the word yaoi as a synonym love. So, for example, if I say I liked the two characters Kamen and Aritham from Genshin Impact to be in love, I would call that a yaoi-shin. And when I was on our god-loving website AO3 and I read a good steep fan fiction between the two of them, I would put down the story and go, God! I love yaoi. Also, some more terms for a now you know kind of thing. Yuri is the same thing, but about two women being in love. And girls who like Yuri are called Kimijoshi, while the boys who like Yuri are called Kimidachi. Men
Oh,
who
cool.
like boys love
There is a name
instead
for
of
us. Never mind
are
that.
actually called
My rant was
There's a
pointless.
lot of connotations
I was just stupid
these words
and
that
unaware
were
and
so
uninformed.
So let's circle back to the main character of the story, the Fujoshi. I by men for women, and you know,
Didn't hurt.
historically speaking, never a good thing. Never a good thing to happen. Male anime or manga fans, known as anime or manga otakus in Japan, wanted to give a name to other women otakus who like to consume BL. The term Fujoshi, written in this way, actually translates to respectable woman. But these sneaky
What?
men didn't
Nice.
want to, and switched out one of the characters to a homophone that completely changed the meaning. So the meaning of the word Fujoshi went from respectable woman two rotten women. Rotten for enjoying a homoerotic love story between two men. Rotten and thus unsavory and not good for marriage. As
Bullshit.
time passed, these rotten women wanted to reclaim the word in a self-deprecating way. They would soon start to refer to themselves as fujoshi, refer to
As
themselves
usual.
as rotten, in a way to gain back some power that these stinky men tried to take away from them. The history of this word is often forgotten, either
It's kind of
physically
using
or
your own
in my own experience online,
self-deprecating
I've
thing, like
people
how
who think that fujoshi
people,
call themselves
black
rotten
people
in like
call
a
to
serious
themselves
way,
as
like
maniba
fujoshi
or something
genuinely
along
think
those
that
lines
they are
now.
rotten for consuming queer stories in a kind of like weird way, but that's just not the case. It was always kind of reclaiming a derogatory word that was inflicted upon them by men. So I'm glad we cleared that up. In an article by Professor Fujimoto Yukari from Meiji University, Professor Fujimoto explained the history and evolution of boys' love and yaoi. Before it went global, boys' love was a genre that sprouted in the 1970s in the original form of shonenai, meaning adolescent boys' love, that often appeared in girls' manga, which was also known as shoujo. In the 1960s, most, if not all,
What
manga
about men who like watching BL?
was written by men.
Or read,
Men
whatever.
dominated the manga industry and left
I'm pretty sure she mentioned, but I
women
didn't
as
hear it.
colleagues or as fictional subject matter. Soon, in the 70s, women born after the war decided to pick up the pen and start creating the manga they wanted to see, and a very interesting thing resulted from it. Fujimoto writes, previously, girls' manga featured female lead characters, inevitably limiting expression due to women's position in society. With male protagonists, creators could depict
What?
more independent and proactive characters and include bold, erotic narratives. This realization offered an opportunity, and female readers fervently embraced these works depicting attachment and love between male characters. And thus, BL was born, with the authors of these works being primarily women, and the fans, fujoshi, being women. An additional point to this comes from Kumiko Saito's article, Desire and Subtext, Gender, Fandom, and Women's Male-Male Homoerotic Parodies in Contemporary Japan. Saito points out the fact that in these early times in shoujo manga, the act of for these female characters was often portrayed as a moment of self-sacrifice, a moment of love so strong that the woman would just deal with the pain of the whole ordeal just to get through with it. Now, BL seems to show a direct progression of these two occurrences. One, BL had male leads, which led for the characters to be portrayed as more independent and more bold. BL showed two people both enjoying themselves in the act, where neither one of them was sacrificing something in order to be with the other. Early works of BL were headed by two women, the trailblazers themselves, Takemiya Keiko and Hagio Moto, aimed to start a revolution with their boys' love stories. These earlier works, such as The Poe Clan, The Boy's Name is Gilbert, and The Heart of Thomas, set the manga world on fire. The poem of Wind and Trees by Takemiya was considered the peak of BL, Fujimoto describes, but it featured very graphic scenes of theft and sexual violence. These themes were present primarily due to this shift in manga at the time from frivolous stories to more serious topics and political issues. This trend of including taboo and or graphic scenes would continue in some of the BL works that followed in these women's footsteps, some of which would not handle the subject matter in a respectful way, let's just say, and these works would unfortunately give BL a pretty negative reputation. So, if you were not familiar with these terms or this history, then you probably are not familiar with how fujoshis are seen and treated online. If you are normal and not chronically online, you might be thinking, "Yay, what's the big deal?" Well, let's get into the big deal. Online, fujoshis are seen with disgust and disdain. If you do a quick search here on YouTube.gov, you will see a few pop-ups of commentary videos like this one talking about how problematic the fujoshi is. No shade to them, by the way, y'all slay. Okay? The aim for this video is to explore the disdain held by people and to question it. Are fujoshis really as bad as they say? Should they be abhorred and shamed? Or
Well,
are we
no.
all being a tad too silly, overgeneralizing again and falling into misogynistic traps? So
Yep, that's how it
to
typically
answer
is.
some of these questions. Pause.
Yeah,
You
don't
might be thinking,
understand
"This is
something,
a lot of research
so you
and
make fun of
philosophical
it."
pondering we're doing. Do you ever get to relax? And
It
our responders,
happens.
oh my god, I didn't think you guys cared about me like that, but yes,
With
I personally
video
went down with
games,
the help of
it
today's
happened with
sponsor,
movies,
Misplay. Well, what a
and
seamless
many,
word
many
segue.
more.
Misplay is a loyalty app for certified gamers like you and me that has a ginormous database of games that can fit your every need, whether that be adventure, strategy, puzzle, card games, and more. But the best part about Misplay is that you get rewarded for playing these games. When you download a new game through Misplay, you earn points, which can later be redeemed for gift cards such as PlayStation, Xbox, GameStop, and tons of others. I'm currently
That's a scam.
for a gift card because I have got to continue to fund Misplay. And to do that, I have been clocking in on King's Throne, which is my favorite game that I've downloaded through Misplay so far. I'm on
How
a
the
huge
fuck-
medical kick right
How
now,
the fuck
and
did
if
you
you
allow
like
yourself to
explore
get
that regard,
sponsored by
I
someone like
dive
them?
in head first, dude. So don't dilly-dally. Visit
I
misplay.com
literally no longer need this. I forgot this was a
click on the link in my
schema.
description to download Misplay for free. You'll get 200 bonus points when you sign up today, and when you use my code E50 in the app, you'll get an additional 50 points that will get you started on earning
The lampshade
your
is a
first
little
gift card.
worthless,
See the
but
description
whatever.
for all of
At
the
least I
details.
have one
Thank you
slot
again
free
so
from
much
my
to
favorites
Misplay
again.
for sponsoring this video, and if you don't mind me, I want to go revenge my father and write some medieval galleys. Okay, bye.
What?
So, as you saw in the beginning of my experience being called a Fujo, which wasn't the first time, by the way, Fujoshis aren't referred to in a generally positive light. The argument for why Fujoshis are inherently problematic is a tale as old as time. They are fetishizing gay men. For the rest of the video, instead of saying fetishizing, I'm going to be saying fetishizing. So, sorry, it's YouTube salt on life. This is a common concern when people first encounter women, usually straight women, who like to consume stories about boys being in love or boys doing other things with each other. This is one of the reasons where hatred for these women stem from. Exploiting queer people for their own enjoyment and then going out and being homophobic in the real world. It is a common concern and also a pretty valid one to an extent. One of the biggest critiques
No,
would
it
be on
fucking
that
isn't.
these stories are not actually depicting gay men. They're just depicting a fantasy version of two guys getting together. Some argue that these depictions of same-sex relationships by women are only made to be consumed by women, and that there's absolutely no room for these
Again, the
works
men are able
as
to get away with
representation. Some argue that it was always supposed
indulging
to be a
in Yuri.
fantasy and that it's not that serious. My personal
Although I
opinion
guess-
right now, spoiler alert, is that I fall right in the middle of this too. As a queer person myself, I mean, obviously, I take queer representation
Where are you going?
very
Oh, God.
seriously. But I'm also not in the business of shaming or monitoring or policing what people consume in their free time. It is the ultimate debate of should women be creating this type of content and should they be consuming it? And if they do create or consume it, does that make them fetishistic monsters? To answer the growing list of questions, let's start at why. Why are women drawn to this sort of story in the first place? I have answered
Ow.
this question in the history portion of how BL came to be, where one, men were allowed to just be more independent inherently as being men in society, and also both characters in the story were shown to both enjoy the act equally and lovingly, which was as opposed to how women characters were often portrayed, and also how women characters were portrayed during the act.
Yeah,
How
the
much
Yuri and
was
yaoi
sacrificed
romance
like that was crazy.
stories,
So,
cliches
the
are
solution,
very
two
different.
male main characters who did the do together. Revolutionary concept indeed.
Just as
Can turn
Straight
to
and
further answers
Yuri
from the
stories are
Fujoshis
also
mix
quite different
troubled by
themselves.
Desire and Imagining in the Ontology of Boys Love Fantasy by Chang Wei-John, who explores the psychological backings to the reasons why women are interested in these types of stories. One of the main points that Chang argues is that women consuming and creating boys love is driven by a need to be free of oppressive heteronormative roles that have been put upon them. Women desire for stories where one is not lesser than the other, the woman is not lesser than the man, but that both people in the relationship are inherently seen as equals. Additionally, Chang writes, since cis male bodies are divorced from pregnancy and childbirth, it has been pointed out that BL can serve to liberate women from the gender norm of compulsory motherhood. Translation courtesy of my fluent Japanese speaking friend, Hi Stone! Hi, Ismay, thank you. BL relationships seem to act as a way for women to explore sexuality and love, but without any inherent power dynamics that are found within gender roles. That makes sense to me personally because the only heterosexual ships that I enjoy are the ones where they're enemies, so thus they're
I
both
thought only
equal in that
fictional
way.
women
The girl
spoke like
ends
that.
up girl boss badass, and
I mean,
the
I
boy
guess
some
this could
sweet
just
golden
be a
retriever
YouTube personality
puppy dog
for her.
relationship. Any other straight romance? Yuck. Not about it. That is a thing that I noticed within myself and clicked when I read this article. This want for freedom from heteronormativity in BL is both upheld and contradicted in these stories, where the two male leads often fit into the heteronormative stereotypes, one being the masculine and dominant one, or the seme, and the other being overly feminine and submissive, aka the uke. Both realities can exist at once, where BL can act as an escape from heteronormativity while also reinforcing it. Human nature is just kind of like that. It's always existing in a gray area and will never exist in terms of black and white. Maybe it's so women can imagine themselves in the role of the uke, or somehow forcing men into these roles that women have been subjected to since the beginning of history can be some sort of like payback. Very much a la this meme right here, where the meme says that yaoi is payback for all those years that men didn't allow women to vote. Would have a little bit of truth to it. It's almost next to impossible to put an exact pin into this, because every single person that writes or consumes
Now that's what I call subtle feminists.
sexual violence that sometimes occurs in BL stories is an interesting phenomenon as well. Chang cites it as a feminist issue and goes on to explain how it serves as an act of rifting male gender norms and can be used as a sort of power to women. To be honest, I don't like where that's going, but it is a very honest and serious point to look towards when
A man definitely wrote
BL
that
as a
article.
genre. It does happen, but of course not every single BL work
I know,
contains
that's
these
me being
topics, but it
sexist.
has unfortunately
Just because I'm against it doesn't mean I also doesn't mean I can't practice it myself.
Talking about fujoshis in some people's eyes. There is also the topic and stereotype that fujoshis just actually hate gay men, and all they want to do is fetishize them through the act of creating and
How?
I mean, the stereotype is straight women getting all excited seeing two pretty boys kiss. There's no other word to that specific.
I'm not transphobic.
Fetishization. That is the
And
biggest
enjoy
complaint
Yuri.
when it comes to fujoshis
That
and
makes
the
literally no
existence
sense.
of BL. I personally do think that that term is thrown around a lot, very loosey-goosey style. Can you fetishize fictional characters? Not entirely sure. But put a pin in that. Okay, we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna circle back. I have heard the horror stories back in the day with fujoshis with After the Wild and conventions with the ever infamous yaoi paddle and go around smacking dudes that were cosplaying their two favorite male anime characters that they saw kissing in a yaoi doujin once. Yeah, that actually used to happen. That was a genuine concern. It was kind of like the fujoshi with the yaoi battle. Waiting outside your door. Like, that was a genuine concern for people going to anime conventions. Because it actually happened. That is so far out there.
Bruh.
Who thought that was a good idea? It's something so out there, you just kind of have to laugh. You know, it's so ridiculous. But, of course, as all things with overgeneralizing, unfortunately, those few that wielded such a weapon caused a ripple of hate to be sent on any other women that shared any characteristics with those people. It's the thought
Yep,
process
all
of,
it takes
oh
is
my
one
God,
bad
Fujoshi
experience,
really
and
have
apparently
would
everyone
survive
else
every
is like
single
that now as well.
Jones BL must be like that. This thought process applies
Like you have a single bad experience in freaking China about a Chinese person. All Chinese people are bad.
Rounds on the internet every so often with this horrific caricature of the fujoshi. Sloppy, smelly, ugly, overtly fetishizes real gay men, and other really distasteful jokes that I have blurred out because
It's easy, it's simple.
Images like this one, where my friend
You're easy and simple.
unfortunately, are one of the reasons why I'm making this video. It's another tale of the dangers of overgeneralization and how unchecked hate can lead to some pretty dark places. So, to
Racism,
sum
lol.
up this section, there are of course some very
America,
dark
lol.
takes to make of BL as a genre and also of fujoshi of old. But does BL come from a place of oppression? And is the hate for Fujoshi's just a side effect of misogyny, among others. And that, my friend, takes us to the next section. My arm fucking hurts. AO3, the God-honoring fanfiction website of purity and wholesomeness.
Huh? Are we?
AO3, short for Archive of Our Own, is a website for the most hardcore of fanfiction reading and composing. When you are but a wee lad, you start off strong on Wattpad, or even the occasional short Tumblr fic, reading about your favorite Doctor Who characters, but like in a high school setting, for example. When you have
I started in fanfiction.net.
as you age, you soon graduate to the treacherous waters of A3, where the tagging and content rating soon turns into another language for you because you have to whip out the literal Rosetta Stone to translate that. Anything goes on this website, for it is the Wild West for many a reader and writer. And honestly, it's the backbone of society today. Okay, fanfiction writers, I salute you. For it arguably
What?
being the destination in the West for writers to flock to when they want to share their creativity on just how freaky.
Fuck, I was actually gonna go write some fanfiction a little while ago, but then I decided I would play Zelda instead.
On the pulse of what the people are craving these days. And spoiler alert, it's gay. Some may argue it's yaoi. Okay, AO3 user Center Lights, I salute you, put together an AO3 ship stats of 2023 that depicted the most popular fanfiction pairings from August 2022 to August 2023, with 4,472 kudos, which is likes, basically, to normal people. The center of these lights gives us a good glance into what the people of the internet crave the
Oh shit, I forgot to stop the recording.